He plays e4 and I have black. I'm going to play c6, my favorite defense, the Caro-Kann. He plays d4, he takes the center, that's normal. And here I play d5, supported by the pawn on c6. Which variation will he choose? He plays knight to c3. He's playing the classical variation. He could have played the advanced variation or the exchange variation. But knight c3 is played. Well, I take on e4. And here he recaptures with the knight, and I play knight to f6. I know he can take my knight and double my pawns. But I do it anyway. Why? Because if he had taken my knight, I would have recaptured with the pawn, freeing the bishop, and after kingside castling, I would have had a more secure king with 4 pawns for protection. Even though he had a healthy majority on the other side of the board, but he decided to play knight to g3. I play bishop to g4. Protected by the knight, I attack his queen. He moves the queen to d2, which is quite rare, but he didn't want to play. f3, maybe to avoid weakening the protection around his king and on bishop. e2 or knight f3, maybe he was simply afraid of that, an exchange, so he plays queen to d2. But it's a bit awkward as a square because it prevents the bishop on c1 from developing. So I'm just going to play e6, I think. And he plays c4. So in this position, you have to understand that for now, I'm fairly well developed. I have 2 pieces out against 2, but it's my move. On the other hand, he has a better center of pawn. He has the space advantage. He has 2 pawns on the 4th rank. Of course, here, we can all see that bishop to b4 could cause him problems, but still, my bishop needs to be protected. And if I play a move to protect my bishop, like knight a6 or pawn to a5, he has time to play a3 and deprive me of the b4 square. So I'm not sure if that's a good thing, because after knight a6, a3, maybe my knight would just end up badly placed. Well, I can still play a5, because if he plays a3, maybe my pawn isn't so badly placed after all. All right, let's play it. Let's see what happens. He plays c5, blocking my bishop from coming to b4, but by playing c5, he gives me the d5 square. It's true that he also opens the diagonal for his bishop, and his bishop can get to the c4 square, that's true, but it's not that dangerous either, because the pawn e6 completely blocks any attack along that diagonal. And I'm even considering a move, like b6, by the way. He won't always be able to take because of bishop b4. And if I play b6, I attack the pawn c5 twice. How is he going to defend it? I don't know. It could be interesting. We could also play b5, knowing that he can't take en passant because of bishop b4. And if I play b5, I gain a bit of space, and I deprive his bishop of the c4 square. But I think I'm going to go for b6. So here, I'm attacking his pawn on c5 twice. He plays h3, immediately questioning my bishop. So here, if I play bishop f5, he'll take pawn takes. That opens the e-file. I'm not very comfortable with that, so I'll play x5. It's true that after KL takes, KV takes, my knight isn't very well placed, but well, we'll play it anyway. He takes, I take back. I know my knight isn't well placed. It's even under attack here. Unfortunately, I can't go to f4. His queen is there, so I'll go back to f6. And now he'll probably finish his development with lf3. No, he moves his queen. He's actually coming to defend c5. Now, after the exchange, I can't recapture with the bishop because of the queen. Maybe knight to d5 to attack his queen and distract it from defending the pawn on c5. Besides, knight to d5 is actually a good knight move. We're taking advantage of the d5 square, the weak square. All right, I'll play knight to d5. And I free up the f6 square for my queen, which can sometimes be interesting. He plays queen to g3. So now he's attacking. g7, he's counterattacking on g7. So if I go pawn takes, bishop takes, he can play queen takes on g7, attacking my rook. It's not that serious. I can play a move like queen, f6. That protects my rook. And if he takes, the knight takes back. But I'll still check if I don't have something else. On the capture on c5, then pawn takes. I don't have to play bishop. I can take on c5 right away. I could have a move like knight to d7 to attack his pawn on c5. And if I play f3, maybe knight takes bishop to mess up his structure a bit, and maybe then go take on c5. Yes, so I'll take on c5 once. And actually, he doesn't take back. He plays knight to f3. He's threatening kingside castling to finish his development, whereas I still have my king in the center. If I take on d4, that activates his knight a bit. He attacks the c6 pawn, but my knight defends. On the other hand, if I go attack his knight via c5, I'll get hit with bishop. b5, check. Since I don't have a bishop on the white square, I really need to be careful about defending my white squares. Can I offer him the exchange of queens with queen to d6? He can't play bishop to f4, there's the knight. So queen to d6. If he takes, bishop takes, that solves the problem of developing my bishop and the safety of my king. So after queen to d6, he might not want to accept the exchange. Where is he going to play? If he plays queen g4, maybe we can attack it with knight f6 again. Or push it to h5, we'll have to see. So queen to d6, what is he going to play? Maybe queen h4, but queen h4, bishop e7. I like qd6, I'm going to play qd6, mainly because he can't play bishop. f4 actually, thanks to my knight. He castles kingside, but now I'm going to take his queen. I trade queens with him, and I have an extra pawn. On the other hand, I'm still behind in development, but well, if I take on d4 here, what is he going to do? Knight takes, but bishop c5 the pin, and he can't play bishop e3 because of the knight. So pawn takes, knight takes, bishop to c5, and if he plays rook to d1, the push e5 and his knight is lost. So that means that after the capture on d4, he can't recapture with the knight. You see, I'm going to take advantage of the opening of the diagonal. The exchange on g3 diverted his f-pawn from protecting his king along the diagonal. So I take, and if he doesn't recapture, I now have 2 extra pawns. It's getting interesting. He recaptures. There might be something I didn't see. Bishop to c5. What did I miss? He plays bishop to h5. He counterattacks on f7, but I'm actually going to take his knight with check. And then he plays g6. No, but this is a disaster. He plays king to h1. So simply g6. I can even make kingside castling. Now I'm spoiled for choice. Well, I'll make kingside castling. I don't know which was best. The game is now less interesting because I have an extra piece. And remember, earlier he was well developed. Now he has all his pieces on the first rank. It's a disaster. So here, Agadmator is rated 2000 on chess.com. Maybe the bot ratings aren't very representative because he still made some serious mistakes. Well, let's finish developing. Maybe knight d7. I also like the move knight e3. That creates forks. It's going to break up his pair of bishops. But I'm going to choose to develop knight to d7. I'm connecting the rooks. My knight is going to join the fight a bit. He plays bishop 5. He's attacking the pawn on c6. If he takes on c6, he's attacking the knight and the rook. Here, I was considering rook to b8 to counterattack on b2. But we also have knight to e5. All right, I'm going to play knight to e5. I'm going to bring my knights closer. He plays the rook there. He's attacking my bishop. Maybe bishop to f2 to attack his pawn on g3. That's what I'm going to do. He plays bishop to f4. So here, I'm really tempted to take his bishop, but pawn recaptures. He attacks my knight moves, and I still lose c6. But anyway, if my knight moves, I would lose c6 no matter what. Okay, I'm going to take his bishop on the black square. And then he brings the knight to g6 to attack g3. If he plays bishop takes c6, I simply move my rook. He plays rook here, but bishop e3, I attack pawn and rook. We'll play it like that. He comes there, so I take on f4. He's going to end up taking on c6 anyway. No, he attacks my bishop, but my knight defends. And here, I don't feel like defending c6 because it's still pretty passive. But maybe I'll play c5. Here, I can play f5, trade the pawn on c5 for the pawn on b2. That might be a good thing because the pawn on c5 is a target here. Let's do that. f5. We trade it for the pawn on b2. My pawn on a5 is attacked, but oh well. Rook d1, careful that he doesn't get too active with his rooks. You see, I wouldn't want him to end up with both rooks on the 7th rank. So we're going to try to contest that a bit. On the other hand, if we play a rook move to d8, he can exchange the rooks and win the pawn on a5. And I can't go to d1 since the bishop controls it. Maybe rook to c8 then. Rook takes, rook takes. And I could even play rook to c1 under the protection of the bishop to pin it, so his rook can't invade my territory. So I'll play 7 rooks to c8. He plays the bishop to a6, attacking my rook. Well, rook to b8. If he takes the pawn, he loses the bishop. Can I play rook to a6? He can't play rook to c1 because of the bishop, but can I play it? Rook a6, I would threaten rook. Takes, rook takes back. And if I play rook d8, check. I have the knight coming back to f8. So rook a6, that seems good. He's going to play bishop, b7, the fork. I take his rook, he's going to land with check, I'll put the knight, and then he'll take my rook. But I'll have rook check, king here, and maybe bishop e5, check. That could still be interesting. On the other hand, I can't play knight e7 because if he takes my rook, and if I take his, I get checkmated by rook d8. Shall we play rook? A6, bishop, b7, I take his rook. He can land on d8, the knight comes to f8, he takes back, but that's fine, we'll play this line. We're going to force things, there we go. He plays bishop here, that was expected, I take his rook. He's going to come in, give check, the knight comes back. No, he takes on a6, he didn't even want to worsen the position of my knight. But now, rook is number 1, and I force the exchange of the rooks now. So I have a majority of 4 pawns against 2, and I have an extra knight. So to win, I need to activate my majority and my knight, of course. So we'll start with e5, activating the majority. He plays bishop there. He's putting pressure on my knight, but that's not a problem. I'm going to activate my king in the endgame. We need the king as well. I'm activating the role of the king. I want to play king e6, f5. Well, he can play bishop c4 check, and that's actually what he does. If I move, he'll take my pawn. So I'll go to f6 to defend my pawn. Maybe knight e7 if he comes to take the pawn. g6, his bishop gets trapped, I think. And so g6 and king g7 afterwards. And he loses his bishop. So he comes here, this king g7, he planned for it. King takes pawn, I take his bishop, and maybe after he planned king f6 to attack my knight and my pawn, trying to win a lot of pieces. Listen, here I'm going to play bishop b2, I'll defend my pawn, and I'm threatening king g7 now. He takes, so here, I don't even know what to recapture with. Everything seems good. I'll recapture with the king, with the pawn, I don't even know. I recapture with the king with 2 extra pieces. Now that should do it. I play f5. We're going to try to checkmate him with the bishop and the knight. That could be fun. So I'm going to take his pawns. I'm going to checkmate him with the bishop and the knight. So usually human players generally resign at this stage because they know I'm going to win the pawns and make new queens. But since it's a bot, it won't resign. So I'm going to let him take my pawns. I'm going to take his, and I'm going to checkmate him with the bishop and the knight, which is the hardest checkmate to achieve. So I'm going to play king g5. I'm going to go after his pawn. And then I'll go after the pawn on the other side. He still needs to let me get out with my king. There we go. And I'm going to give him my pawns as well. He might attack my bishop. That's what's happening. Let's go after his pawn. He comes here, so I'll let him have this pawn on purpose. He doesn't take it. I'm leaving. I'm giving him the pawn. He doesn't take it. He's being annoying. I'm actually going to decide to move my bishop to completely abandon the protection of that pawn. I'm going to check. I hope he'll come and take this pawn. If he doesn't take the pawns, I'll put him with bishop and knight without him having taken the pawns, actually. But what I want is for him to attack the pawns and take them, to really clear the board. Come on, take the pawn. There we go. He takes the pawn. Now let's move the king. All right, let's let him take this pawn. In advance. And now we'll even give him a check so that he comes to take the pawn. Because here, if he doesn't take the pawn, there's queen. There we go. He took the pawn. And now the bishop and knight mate. So to deliver mate with bishop and knight, you can only checkmate the king in a corner on a black square. That means I can only checkmate the king in a 1 or h8. There is no other square. And you have to be careful about all the stalemates that could happen. And since the bishop will control the black squares, the knight will have to zigzag, controlling the white squares to force the king to come to h8 onto the square where the bishop will eventually deliver mate. So here, what I want first is to make sure the king can't escape. You have to try to trap him on the edge of the board and then bring him to the corner, specifically the corner of a black square. So I have several ways to do this. Either I bring my king closer or I put my knight on f4. For example, knight e6 if he tries to escape with king b3, knight c5. He could come to c4, I move my bishop back, and you see his king won't have access to this black diagonal, and the knight will control the white squares, and that will force the king to retreat. But here, obviously, we still prefer to bring the king closer. So I think I play king c5 like this. If I play king b3, I play king b5, and he'll be forced to retreat since I'm controlling the black squares. So king c5, king b5, he'll retreat to c2, and king c4, most likely. And he'll try to escape to the other side. We're going to bring in the knight. So here, the objective is to bring my king closer, of course, to try to confine him to the first rank and force him onto the black square. But he will do everything he can to get to the other side, onto the white square. And so the technique is that the bishop will control the black squares. And the knight will need to be on the second rank on a black square to control the white squares on the first rank. So it will often need to be on f2, d2, or b2 to control the white squares. And little by little, force the king onto a black square because the bishop will take care of controlling the different black squares with the diagonals. And here, you see, my knight is not well placed to reach the black squares on the second rank. For example, if it moves closer to f4, it will only be able to land on white squares and control the black squares, and that would overlap with the bishop. So that's something you shouldn't do. So how should you do it? You definitely need to move the knight back so it can come to a white square on the fourth rank. And so it can eventually get onto the black squares on the second rank. That's how it should be done. So I'm going to start by moving the knight back. Now he might try to escape. But in any case, the knight controls the white squares, the bishop controls the black squares. So that creates a nice blockade for him. He won't get out that easily. He might try to go to b7 or h3, but there won't really be a way out. And whatever happens next will bring him either to a1 or to h8. We're going to bring the king a bit closer. Bring the king a bit closer. You see, there really isn't any way out for him. We bring the king closer. And he moves on to the white square. And now the knight needs to come to f2 on a black square to control the white square and force the king, little by little, to go to the other side. So I'll play knight g4 and then put it on f2. So knight to g4. He comes to g1. Knight to f2, so he can't reach the white square. Now I'll have to play x2, so he can't reach the black square. The king comes here, so in this position, you have to play knight to f4. There will be a crab maneuver with the knight. If the king goes back to the white square, knight to d2, always the black square on the second rank to force the king to leave the white square and go to e1. So I'll play knight to e4. And if the king goes out to d1, it will actually be a false escape. Because I could play king to a3, he will go out to c2, but knight will come to control the white squares. And as soon as the king comes to c3, the bishop will come to d6 to control the black squares. I have my king, which will control the e5 square, and the white king will be forced to go back to the edge. So here we can play knight e4. I hope he will show this false escape so I can explain it to you. Because if he goes to Formula 1, it's too easy. I would just have to play knight d2, check. But he comes to d1, so maybe we'll get this false escape. King e3. Come on, go out to c2. He goes out to c2. Look, knight d2, I control the white squares. Still the knight on a black square to control the white squares. So he came to b2. So here, I'm just going to play bishop d6 to control the black square. The knight controls the white square. If he comes to c2 or c3, I play bishop c5 to force his king to retreat. And my king will approach since my knight also controls the white square. All the squares will be controlled. So I play bishop d6. You see, I control this black square, and the knight controls this white square. He comes there, so a little waiting move, simply so that the king retreats, and my king can access the d3 square. Now he comes to d1, so here I play king to d3, and if he plays king to e1, a little waiting move with my bishop, he will be forced to return to d1 since the knight controls the white square. And when he comes back to d1, I could bring my bishop to f2 to control the black square and still force his king to go towards the a1 square. So king to d3. So he plays to e1, the little waiting move. Look, I play bishop to b6. I just wait for him to come to d1. The knight covers the white squares and the bishop covers the black squares. Now I play the bishop there. He can no longer go to the square one. And now still the crab maneuver, knight to c4, so that the knight eventually arrives on b2, controlling this white square. So knight to c4. If he comes to d1, knight to b2, and he'll be forced to go back to c1, and my king will be able to come in. Here he comes directly to b3. So I look at king c3. If he comes to c1, knight b2, and he can't escape. So king c3. He comes to c1, knight b2. You see why the knight has to get onto the black squares of the second rank. It's really to control the white squares of the first rank. So he comes to b1. I play king b3. If he comes to c1, bishop check, that's what's going to happen. And now watch closely. This is where you mustn't make a mistake. The knight needs to get to a3. I'm going to play knight to c4 so that it can come to a3 to attack the king on the white square. And when the king goes to the black square, bishop to d4. But after knight c4, he's going to play king a1. I mustn't play knight a3 right away, otherwise it will be stalemate. So after knight c4, king a1, you need to make a little waiting move. The king must return to b1, and after that, play knight to a 3 check. It goes to a1, and bishop e, 5 mates. So what are we going to play? Knight c4. Now the little waiting move. He has to come here. The knight comes to attack the king. It has to go to a black square. And now bishop e5, that's checkmate. So the computer gives me 87% accuracy versus 80% for Agadmator's bot. The rating for the game for Agadmator was 2000. Elos, just like his base rating. In the opening, he had 95% accuracy and I had 96%, so it was pretty similar. In the middle game, 62% versus 95%, and in the end game, 73% for him versus 82%. It's true that the end game, as a result, my evaluation dropped because I gave him my pawns. In reality, I could have gone for a queen quickly, but it was to show you the maneuver to checkmate with the knight and bishop. So I hope this game was instructive and entertaining, and we'll see each other soon for new adventures on the chessboard. Don't hesitate to leave me likes and comments. I'll be reading them. Goodbye, everyone.